Hello, and welcome to this lecture on Adobe Illustrator by Eduonics Technologies. In this lecture, we're going to be going deeper into the pen tool, as this is part 2 of learning how to use the pen tool. And we'll also be taking a look at the pencil tool for editing and manipulating paths. There's a number of things that we go into as far as paths, but in a later course, we'll be studying paths and manipulating anchors in depth, although pay attention now, you'll get a little preview of what's to come. So let's start off by taking a look at the Convert Anchor Point tool. The Convert Anchor Point tool is located in the Tools panel underneath the Pen tool. If you can't see it, just click the Pen tool and hold it in, and just go down to the last option. It's also a shortcut key Shift-C, as in Charlie. And with this, I can click an anchor and drag, and when I drag, it drags out handles on each side equally. Now another thing to note is when you're dragging out handles or editing any shape, that blue line you see there is what will happen when I unclick. Another thing you can do with the Convert Anchor Point tool is if you already have an anchor with handles and you click on the anchor with the tool, it'll get rid of the handles. So remember that tool, it's shortcut key Shift-C as in Charlie. One thing I should mention is that whenever we're working with anchors and handles, we have to be using the direct selection tool. It's the white arrow tool in the tools panel. It's also shortcut key A. But back to the Convert Anchor Point tool, and this works with the direct selection tool. Let's say if I wanted to edit just one handle, it's much more easy to just hold in Alt and click the handle with the Convert Anchor Point tool. As you can see, I can drag it anywhere and it doesn't affect the other handle. And something important to note with what we've talked about so far, the direct selection tool will bring up handles, and the Convert Anchor Point tool will edit them in a certain way that the direct selection tool can't. Now you'll be alternating a lot between these two tools, so to maximize efficiency whenever you're using a tool and you want to bring up the direct selection tool, just holding Control and you can use it temporarily while you're holding it in. When you let go of Control to go back to your original tool. Using this method, you can edit anchor points very fast and effectively. It's the Scissors tool, or shortcut C. Now with the Scissors tool, I can click right here, and it's going to cut this line segment into two. Although with the two lines right next to each other, it draws a virtual line in between them to complete the shape, although it is technically not complete. Here I can brighten this stroke so you can see how it's separated. As you can see, the blue stroke has been separated, and that was the place where we cut. And that's a single cut on one shape. If you wanted to cut the shape in half by cutting the line, you'd have to cut it twice since it's a continuous line. So go up to your Scissors tool or hit shortcut C, click on one side and click on the other, and there you've created two shapes, as you can see when I separate the two. Now I'm going to give you a little sneak peek into a later section because it's really useful now, and that's the Join tool, and we're going to use it to put this shape back together. I simply highlighted the two overlapping anchor points, and you have to make sure they're perfectly overlapping. I right click and I select Join, and it'll join those two back together. You can use any kind of selection tool. I just used a lasso. I selected two anchor points, which I know because we cut them. I click Join, and basically I rejoin the two cut anchors. The reason why it's important to make sure they're in the exact same position is because it'll give you an error, and it's also because it's very temperamental. It's the only way that join works. So let's take a look at what Alt can do for the pen tool. For instance, when I'm in the Add Anchor Point tool and I hold in Alt, it goes to subtract. When I let go of Alt, it goes back to add anchor point. And this is what I was saying when I said the pen tool is very complicated, and once you learn to use it, it becomes a very powerful tool. So these two things go hand in hand. Now, as you know, with the pen tool, when I hold over an anchor point, it turns to subtract anchor point. But if I'm holding an alt, it turns into convert anchor. What you've probably noticed by now is that alt will give you the alternate version of a tool, an option on Mac. Now, one more thing with alt, and it involves converting handles when you're creating something. Take out your pen tool and draw a couple lines, and at the end, let's say you want to create a handle, a special handle, not a double one like you normally get. So we're going to hold in alt and click on this and drag out a single handle, and doing it this way gives you maximum control over your handles. When you let go of alt, you immediately go back to creating the shape with the pen tool. So it's extra useful because you can go back and forth really quickly. Now, I urge you to play around with the pen tool. The possibilities are limitless, but it's time for us to take a look at its wayward brother, the pencil tool. So as you know, the pen tool is very rigid, very exacting. The pencil tool is not like that at all. It's the exact opposite. So I've selected the pencil tool, and what this does is it basically just draws whatever you draw with your mouse. You use your mouse to create the shape actively. If you're creating a shape with this, it can be kind of tricky and kind of bumpy. Also, it doesn't auto-complete itself just by holding it over. You have to actually hold in Alt, and when you hold in Alt, you'll see the little circle pop up, and when you let go of it, it'll draw a straight line back to the origin. So here we go, and if I want to finish this off, I'll hold in Alt, it'll draw a straight line back to the origin. So now let's take a look at some of the settings for the pencil tool. If you double click on the pencil tool, it'll bring up the settings window. The reason why we're getting into these settings is because you can actually make Illustrator automatically smooth out and get rid of the jitteriness. First off is fidelity. It determines how close the vector path is drawn in relation to the movement of your mouse. So basically a lower fidelity results in a path that more exactly matches the actual movement of your mouse. And the smoothness refers to how much smoothing Illustrator applies as you draw them. So the higher the smoothness setting, the fewer anchor points, and the smoother the lines and curves. So basically, if you want Illustrator to smooth out your paths, experiment with lowering the fidelity and raising the smoothness, trying to get a feel of what each one does. Now those options are pretty important, but the most important one on here, I'd have to say, is Edit Selected Paths. So before you click OK, make sure that Edit Selected Paths is highlighted. This is important because the next thing I'm about to show you is what I consider to be the most useful aspect of the pencil tool. So basically with the pencil tool, I just start on anywhere on the shape on the outside, on the stroke part of it, and I just start drawing, and I end on the stroke or the outside of the shape again. When I let go of the mouse, it's going to convert that in what I just drew. So basically you're reshaping the shapes that you've already drawn, and you might need to draw something that's very specific, but with the pencil tool you can reshape it in small little ways to make it look just perfect, because as you remember, the pen tool is very painstaking. So, another use of the pen tool is if you have a jagged edge, for example, and you want to smooth it out. Well, if you have your smoothness settings turned up and your fidelity turned down, your pencil line is going to be very averaged out, very smooth, and you'll easily be able to get rid of any jagged edges or any crazy looking chopped up lines, and all with the pencil tool, which is a very useful tool. So that concludes this lecture on Adobe Illustrator Pen and Pencil Tool, Part 2. As you can see, the two tools are very useful and at the same time very complicated. So practice, go back, look at these videos again, and practice some more. And once again, thank you for watching.